Hello everybody, welcome back to another Infinite Lagrange tutorial video. Today we're going to be going over something that's a little bit more archaic and hidden in the game, and that is ship stats. Now, it has always been the case that the statistics of ships in this game are mostly available to you, and you can see them just by opening up the ship blueprints, clicking on a ship, and then looking down at the bottom. You will see various stats, such as right here in the combat rules, the basic stats, such as your health, physical armor, warp speed, traveling speed, and then these three stats over here, which are your anti-ship damage per minute, your anti-aircraft damage per minute, and your siege damage per minute. I'm going to do a real quick adjustment to my client to make it a little bit easier for me to see. There we go. Alright. Now, the combat rules of a ship are pretty spot on for telling you what that ship's going to be good at. So we will take this Xeno Stinger tactical frigate, for example. We have an S ranking in anti-ship. That's because the UAVs hit very hard. That is 10,800 DPM in a frigate. But this frigate costs 6 points, so it's really about the same as some of the lower end destroyers are, like the Winged Hussar and the Quar. And now, while certain versions of the Winged Hussar can get that high of damage, and of course the Railgun Quar can get way more damage, this frigate does energy damage, ignoring armor, and it moves really fast. So, it's better. Now, just gave you a whole bunch of information, so let's go ahead and parse that down a little bit. DPM. Everybody who plays games knows that you have damage, you have life, or in this case, health, armor, ship armor, HP, what have you. In Infinite Lagrange, damage is calculated as damage per minute instead of damage per second. Most games do DPS, we do DPM. So if we take a look here, our total anti-ship fire says that we have 10,816 damage per minute. These are coming from our offensive Stinger UAVs right here, doing about 10,000 of it, and we carry 4 of them. And a little tiny bit of damage from our generic batteries, which are really only good for tickling a ship or potentially maybe damaging an aircraft if it gets attacked. But they're really not much, and I don't really count them for much. Still worth upgrading eventually, though. Next up, we have our anti-aircraft DPM. Now, our UAVs cannot actually hit aircraft. They can only hit ships, which is fine. But our generic batteries prioritize aircraft and do primarily anti-aircraft damage. And if we click the info here, we can see that their attack priority says they will shoot at corvettes first, then fighters, finally destroyers, and other frigates. They do not do very much damage, they shoot relatively quickly, and they lock on relatively quickly. So we have a duration, that's how long the weapon is continuously firing for. Certain weapons, such as missile systems, have duration. This kind of weapon does not. So it fires, boom, goes on cooldown. We have attacks per round. This denotes how many times the weapon actually fires in a round. Now, we currently have 2 guns, and it attacks 2 times for 15 plus 4 damage per shot. Finally, we have lock-on time. This is how long it takes for this weapon to actually acquire a target and then start attacking. Lock-on time of 2 seconds is really fast, basically not even noticeable. Sometimes you actually want your lock-on time to be longer, not faster, but the only time that is usually true is in the case of aircraft. Certain aircraft have a targeting profile like this that tells them to fire at other aircraft. However, they will prioritize aircraft that attack them. So we will use the Mistral and the Sandrake as an example. The Sandrake is objectively weaker than the Mistral. It has more damage, but its weapon type is less effective and its targeting profile less effective because its weapons are a counter attack, just like this, anti-aircraft counter attack. So a good chunk of the Sandrake's damage only will attack when attacked. So let's say you go into a battle and your Mistral and their Sandrakes have a 3-second lock time each. Your Mistrals will lock onto and attack their Sandrake. Their Sandrake will lock on and attack your Mistral. But what happens if you don't just have Mistrals, but also have, say, a Void Elfin or a CV-1103? Well, now let's say that your CV-1103 has a lock time of 2 seconds. Your CV locks the Sandrake and attacks it. The Sandrake, because it was attacked, has all of its weapons that are on counter-attack attack that CV-11. The rest of the weapons, however, will go after the Mistral, so it splits its damage between the two ships. Meanwhile, the Mistral will fully attack the Sandrake and defeat it. If your Sandrake, however, had a faster lock time, it would lock onto the... Or if your Mistral had a faster lock time, it would lock onto the Sandrake, begin attacking the Sandrake, and actually get counterattacked and killed by the Sandrake. So, very important to pay attention to statistics such as duration and lock time, particularly if you're trying to sync up certain weapon systems that have bonuses to duration. For example, we'll go to the Reliant here. And you see the strategy for the cluster munitions. Or the strategy for the anti-aircraft support. One of my favorite strategies is this one. Concentrate fire. Syncs all weapons in the system with the primary weapon, focusing all fire on one target and reducing your cooldown by 80% every 90 seconds for 8 seconds. What this effectively means is 90 seconds into the fight, all the weapons on this ship, all 18,768 damage per minute, will switch targets onto whatever target the primary weapon is firing on. Now this ship only has one weapon, it's the integrated railgun system, and this bow-mounted railgun is the primary weapon. But these secondary railguns here still do a fair bit of damage. Maybe they're shooting at an aircraft, maybe they're shooting at a frigate. Well, when that procs, this damage per minute will actually skyrocket to 5 times this value. The bow-mounted railgun, which does 16,000 damage per minute, will also skyrocket. This allows you to very quickly turn what would normally be a couple minute kill time on a ship that's at 10-15% being repaired to pop, it's gone. Especially if you can combine strategies, such as the case of the Railgun Corps with the ST-59. If I can click on it. The ST-59 has a strategy right here. While in combat, when the enemy's fleet command points are 80% higher than you, prioritize attacks on 2 enemies with the lowest HP. Now these numbers do change. I don't know exactly if it's when the enemy is 60%, 50%, whatever, and then attack more targets. I don't know. But I know that they change. But what this means just in its default version is if you have a fleet that has 100 command points and your enemy has 180 command points, let's say you've been duking it out for a while, every single ship in your fleet, every single weapon in your fleet is going to prioritize attacking the 2 enemy ships that have the lowest total HP. This is tremendously powerful. If you have a fleet of 100 CP and that 100 CP does, let's just say, 100,000 or 200,000 damage per minute, well, that 100 or 200,000 damage per minute is all going after one ship. Let's say that the enemy has an ST-59 of their own and it's in the front line. This damage would be enough to just outright kill an ST-59. Assuming it's the lowest health, meaning it's probably well below half health, this thing would just be annihilated, reducing the enemy's CP total and thus potentially turning off that bonus. But that strategy continues. And if that strategy were to sync up with, let's just say, the bonus from my railgun destroyer, all of a sudden, I am dishing out 5 times this. I'm dishing out 90,000 damage per minute for 8 seconds, yes. So really, you could say I'm only going to be dishing out 9,000 damage total. But I have 10 of these. And if I have 10 of these in a fleet, that is 90,000 damage. Enemy's got a cruiser like a Cass, 90,000 damage. That fully kills that Cass from full life to dead. Or let's say I have a Xeno Stinger. Let's say my Xeno Stinger here is actually using prioritized targets to attack the enemy carrier in the backline. Well, I damage one of their carriers, I get it to 50% life, it's the lowest health enemy. All of a sudden, all the Xeno Stingers dump all of their damage into it, but not just them. All of my indirect firing ships, with their torpedoes, with their missiles, they all will attack that carrier, obliterating it oftentimes before the opponent can retreat. Very handy. So let's move on from strategies. Kind of jumped over to them from damage. Let's talk about your defenses next, because defenses are, of course, extremely important in Infinite Lagrange. Defenses are subdivided into basically 3 categories. You have raw HP right here. You have armor or energy resistance. And then finally, you have evasion. Now, I will cover evasion in a second because it's a little bit special and kind of cryptic for people. But let's start with HP. HP is pretty straightforward. You have a flat amount, and through upgrades, you increase that amount by a percentage. If your HP hits 0, one of 2 things happens to the ship. Either the ship enters emergency evasion mode and retreats back to the base at the end of the battle, or it dies. If its propulsion system is destroyed by the effect of something like a VTOS A, which targets propulsion systems and damages them, the ship is destroyed, period. Normally, a ship has something approaching a 60% chance or 66% chance to enter evasion mode and retreat. Take out that propulsion, and that big expensive carrier, gone. Next up, we have armor. Now, I will admit that I am relatively new to this game, so the exact effect of how armor works, I do not fully understand. What I do, however, know is that flat armor is subtracted from the damage dealt by physical or projectile weapons. So, using this ship as an example, I have a Octafire torpedo launcher. It does 420 damage per torpedo. Fires 1 torpedo every 35 seconds. Or I guess it fires several every 35 seconds. So each of these torpedoes will do 420 damage. If I hit another cast, just like this, that's 50 armor, it should reduce the damage of each of those torpedoes by a flat 50. However, from what I am told, and I have not had the time to extensively test this, but my preliminary tests with NPCs have proven this to be true, you can never do 0 or negative damage. So, in the case of a very unused ship, where are you? The Eris 1 rapid fire cannon destroyer. This thing does 40 damage per hit, but it fires really, really fast, and there are 5 of them. So every 3 seconds, this will fire 5 rounds from its 5 guns that do 40 damage each. If this were to hit my Cass, which has 50 armor, it would not do 0 damage. It would supposedly do 1 damage per weapon. So, in this case, it would just do 5 damage. Pretty lackluster. But that's the importance of armor. Bigger ships have more armor. For instance, my Solar Whale, or my ST-59 with 210 armor. Those torpedoes from before would do half damage to this ship. But armor is only one source of damage or defense, and it only does good against physical weapons, projectile weapons. There are, however, energy weapons, such as the ones found on the Constantine the Great. These energy weapons deal a lot of damage, and they are only mitigated by a ship's energy resistance. Wrong button. Okay, well, since it doesn't want to let me click on it, we will just go to this one. Energy resistance reduces damage done by energy weapons by a percentage instead of flat. So in the case of that Constantine the Great you just saw, it does 500 damage per shot with its main gun. I reduce that damage by 28%. Fully upgraded is 30%, but I don't have the points just yet to do that. If I reduced it by 30 points, however, or 30%, I would be reducing that damage by a pretty significant amount, 150. However, if the weapon system does very little damage, but fires really quickly, such is the case with the Strix B, or Strix A here, this weapon does only 169 damage, and it does it very quickly. This, getting reduced by 30%, is still over 100 damage. It's not that big of a deal. So, in the case of energy weapons, faster firing rates and lower damage but faster firing rates are better than one big high damage hit. Xeno Stingers are a really good example of this. They're offensive UAVs we do not know the details of, but based on its really high damage, the fact that there are 4 of them, we can safely assume that this hits very, very fast and not very, very hard. Now, lastly, we have evasion. Evasion is technically not a defensive stat in the basic stats. Instead, it is a hidden stat on most ships. So, for instance, if you go to the propulsion system on the Reliat Stealth version, or the Carillion Special, or the Eris, or several other ships, you would only see your evasion stat by clicking on this little box right here, which gives you normally just the system HP. Take out the system, and all of the bonuses of that system turn off. So, evasion bonuses, warp speed bonuses, weapon bonuses. But this is also where you will see your ship's evasion. Evasion works exactly as you might think it does. If I attack you and I have a basic default chance to hit of, let's just say, 100%, and you have 35% evasion, I now only have a 65% chance to hit you. And that is for every single attack that would hit you. Ships like the Reliat get special bonuses in the form of the field camouflage system, which gives a flat 35% increased ship evasion, bringing the total up to 70% chance to avoid being hit, and bonuses such as the guidance detection jamming and the visual signal camouflage. Combined, these make our effective evasion go up to 85% versus direct fire weapons such as cannons and the like, and 90% versus missiles and torpedoes. Additionally, we can get more evasion in our armor, reducing our chances of being hit. This is not quite the same as evasion. In practice, it works very similar, but it's not quite the same. But we can reduce our chance to be hit by torpedoes by a further 15 and 25%. So instead of giving us a 100% chance to evade being hit by missiles, in reality what will happen is we would have like an 8% chance. I'm pretty sure from my testing that these work multiplicatively and not additively. If it says it affects evasion and gives you a chance to evade, then it will stack. If it says that it will reduce the chance of being hit by something, then it's multiplicative. So we have 70% evasion total, and then we have an additional 45% chance to dodge torpedoes and 30% chance to dodge missiles. Certain ships actually have a special bonus that will kick in when they get low on life. My Carillion here is one of those ships. 35% chance to evade, an additional 8%, and then when the health of my ship drops down below 20%, I get an additional 50% evasion for 40 seconds. You can think of evasion kind of like a multiplier to your effective hit points. While a single large hit could take your ship out still, if you have low health, if you get hit by a small hit, well, there's a good chance that that bigger hit that also tries to hit you will fail. Just rolling the dice. If you have a 90% chance to dodge, only 1 in 10 hits is going to hit you. Statistically speaking, if a big weapon only fires once a minute, it's not very likely to be the shot that actually hits you. So that wraps it up for our defensive stats, but there are a few other stats that are really important to go over. I'm going to go over them rather quickly, but bear with me. You have your cruising speed. This is the speed at which a ship moves inside of an operation. So for example, if this ship here, mining this rock, were to go down to this rock, it would be using its cruising speed the whole way there. If, however, the ship was going from, say, this rock to this base, it will first cruise to the edge of the operation zone, and then initiate a warp, and then warp all the way to the edge of the new zone or to the base if it is heading back to your stuff. Now there are a few different versions of warping. There is retreating, which is faster, makes you move a lot faster towards your base. There's reinforcing, which makes you move a lot faster towards your own ships, so on and so forth. But they all base their speed off of the warp and cruise speeds of the respective ships. What's more, your fleet has a warp speed of the slowest ship in your fleet. So if you are running around using a Cass and you have not upgraded its warp speed, then your warp speed will be 2500. Doesn't matter if every other ship in your fleet is 5000 move speed or warp speed. That's why it's often a very good idea to make sure that your ships are relatively in line. And if you can't, if you have to use something really big and really slow, like a solar whale, maybe put them in their own fleet of 5 and use them as a reinforcement, which can more or less ignore that warp speed penalty and get them to your fleet a lot quicker. After warp speed and cruising speed, we have one more stat that's relevant for combat ships, and that is the storage capacity. Every ship has a storage capacity, which in the normal portion of the game is only really used for missions. Missions that say take an item from base A to base B, or go guard something, deliver something, yada yada yada. However, when not being used for missions, you can actually use them to go alongside your utility ships. Especially in the early game, your small utility ship has a very, very small cargo hold. It can mine 14,000 units per hour, but it can only hold 3,900. That's not a lot. However, as you just saw with my carrier, has a cargo hold of 130,000. So if I were to send a small mining ship with one carrier, that mining ship would stay in that asteroid belt mining for hours and hours. About 8 hours to be exact. It's a pretty long time. The reason why this is particularly important is for this ship right... Oop, I guess I'm using it. They just made this change in the patch today. The AC-721, one of the free ships you get. The default generic version of this ship has a storage system. These storage bays actually can hold quite a lot, and you can upgrade them very cheaply for 1 point. If you were to fill up an AC-721 Heavy Logistics Destroyer with the full amount of points to upgrade its storage system, you could then take a ship with 20-something thousand cargo capacity and send it alongside your mining ship. It will move very quickly, and then that mining ship will be able to spend more time in the mining belt mining minerals and less time traveling, because most of the mining ships have a very, very, very slow warp speed, slower than basically anything. This medium ship, for instance, has 2,000 warp speed. That is slower than pretty much all of my cruisers. I can't think of any cruisers slower than that, actually. And it's on par with even my battle cruisers, to be honest. The large mining vessel is as slow as a carrier. Very, very slow ship. So it is very advisable to send AC-721s alongside your small and medium mining utility ships in order to bring in more minerals, more deuterium, and more crystal per hour. This will help jumpstart your base and will help to smooth out issues with pirates. Nothing sucks more than getting your mining fleet attacked by NPCs, losing the mining ship, and then having to wait for it to repair and send it back out. Send a few AC-721s with it, and those AC-721s will take the attacks first, allowing you to retreat the mining fleet and not have to wait on that long repair time. The last stat that we could go over is the engineering stat. This is only really useful for when you're trying to build outposts, or when you are trying to build advanced, basic, or intermediate mining platforms. I'm not really going to go over this stat because it's not really known to me how it works. The more of it that you have, the faster you can build something. That's the basic gist of it. Well, that about wraps it up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this two-parter, with part A being linked below. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time.